Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Lee Anderson's Real World, Fridays from 7 p.m.
That's football.
Well,
you know, it's the hope that kills you.
It does. It gives you highs, it gives you lows. I mean, if you're an Everton fan at the moment, you probably had far too many lows. But as you know, I'm a Nottingham Forest fan.
Well, you must be having a huge high.
But you had one of the greatest footballers ever to grace the game, Mike, and that was Dixie Dean.
Yeah, absolutely. William Ralph Dean. Didn't like being called Dixie, but that was his nickname. And he was born in 1907. He was my grandfather's best mate. I'm an Everton shareholder. I've been, attached to the club all my life, and so was my father, so was my grandfather, our greatest ever player.
So back in the day when players like Dixie Dean were playing football for big crowds in, a proper...
72,000.
Yeah, a proper working class sport back in the day, weren't it, football? Not like it is today. You've got to be pretty wealthy to afford a ticket.
Even in the 70s, right, and I've seen some, I do like looking back on the football that I watched as a kid. Even in the 70s now, I've seen pictures of the turnstiles, as we used to call them, with a sign at the top, 5 shillings for the Eastern Terrace. 5 shillings. Yeah. Last time I turned down a ticket to go to a football match was Arsenal, who wanted me to pay £830 for a seat in an executive lounge. And though I could have afforded it, because I've worked all my life like you, I just thought at that point, that's ridiculous.
Well, you should have told him you were Keir Starmer's security man. You'd have probably got him for nothing.
Yeah, well, that's a good idea. Yeah.
But you go back to the the 1930s and 1940s, even the 1960s and 70s. The footballers would walk to the ground and play a game, and then walk back and go for a few beers in the pub.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 11 o'clock, which means it's time for tomorrow's newspapers tonight. Join us over the next hour to find out why Angela Rayner's new project could be the end of free speech in the United Kingdom. How will Starmer use his acting lessons to deal with Trump and the latest lockdown accusations? And who is giving furries at Pride the snip? I'm Josh Howie, and tonight I'm joined by two fresh-faced whippersnappers on the comedy circuit, Simon Evans and Lewis Schaefer, who together will take you through Tuesday's top stories. This is Headliners. But before tomorrow's news, let's go to tonight's headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
Very good evening to you. It's 11 o'clock. Our top stories. A 15-year-old boy who died after he was stabbed at a school in Sheffield has been named locally as Harvey Wilgoose. The teenager was airlifted to hospital after the incident at All Saints Catholic High School just after midday. He died a short time later. South Yorkshire Police have confirmed a 15-year-old boy has been arrested on suspicion of murder and remains in custody. The Prime Minister says his heart goes out to the victim's family.
The terrible stabbing in Sheffield is one where I think the whole country would want to reach out to the family, to the friends, to the school, the entire community. A young boy has gone to school and hasn't returned home, and so my first thoughts as Prime Minister and as a father are with the family.
Well, the Prime Minister was speaking in Brussels, where he has addressed EU leaders over dinner, telling counterparts there should be increased military cooperation and greater industrial collaboration to strengthen defence on the continent. Sergei urged Europe's leaders to do more to counter state threats, including Vladimir Putin's attempts to sabotage vital undersea cables. Earlier, the Prime Minister held talks with the NATO boss, Mark Rutte, saying he wants deeper defence cooperation and an ambitious security partnership with the EU. His comments come as Europe considers how to respond to Donald Trump's return to the White House and the threat of tariffs on European goods. Well, Donald Trump has paused tariffs on Mexican and Canadian goods for 30 days after both countries agreed a border deal with the US. The Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says that's been postponed after he agreed to deploy 10,000 soldiers to protect the border and increase resources to stop the flow of the drug fentanyl heading into the United States from Canada. It follows a similar development earlier after the Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum agreed to improve border security and clamp down on drug trafficking and illegal migration. And a 14-year-old girl who stabbed 2 teachers and a pupil has been found guilty of attempted murder. Earlier, the jury saw CCTV footage showing the pupil in the school hall, where she appeared to stab the knife she'd later used in the attack into the floor a number of times. Now, the girl, who can't be named for legal reasons, is then seen attacking assistant head teacher Fiona Elias and colleague Liz Hopkins. They, along with a pupil, were hospitalised after the attack at Imam Valley School in Carmarthenshire last April. The defendant will be sentenced on the 28th of April. And that is it from the GB newsroom. Now it's back over to headliners.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello and welcome to Headliners, your first look at tomorrow's top stories with 3 comedians. We're going to kick things off with a look at some of the front pages. First of all, we have The Telegraph. Rayner to set rules on Islam and free speech. The Daily Mail, what a time to be crawling back to the EU. And The Times, PM won't back EU in trade war. Now, more front pages to come in a second, but first, welcome, Simon and Lewis.
Hello.
Hope you're both well. We have a really big story here, Simon, on the Telegraph. What do you make of it?
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's the first hint, it's the first whisper. A bit of smoke is going up. Rayner to set rules on Islam and free speech. They are setting up a council. She plans to create a council on Islamophobia and is lining up a former Tory minister to lead it. That would be Dominic Grieve, who has some history, some form on Islamophobia, has been involved with it before. Of course, he fell out with the Tories because he was a staunch Remainer, and eventually he was stripped of the whip by Boris Johnson in 2019 for refusing to play ball there. So he's sort of almost de facto a Labour politician now, in my view. But it's a worrying sign. As I say, it hasn't been formed yet, let alone come up with any recommendations. But obviously off the back of a week in which we've seen one man shot dead for burning the Quran, however deliberately provocative he was obviously being, another man arrested in Manchester, despite the fact that there is no blasphemy law in this country, because he was considered to be... it
was racial incitement.
Yeah, incitement.
Islam is not a race.
No, exactly. So, I mean, arguably, we do need a council, a committee, a discussion to clear the air on this. And if they have this council and it comes down firmly on the side of free speech and a refusal to drift back into medieval notions that certain texts are sacred and must not be disrespected, maybe that would be a good thing. But you can't help feeling at the moment the traffic is all in the wrong direction.
Well, this is it. They're talking. There's 16 people going to be on this council. The person you've just mentioned wrote an introduction for the last council of this sort, which basically came up with this ridiculous definition of Islamophobia being anything that targets expressions of Muslimness or perceived Muslimness, which is the most open-ended statement ever. And they've got someone else involved, an imam, who was involved in calling for a boycott of The Lady of Heaven, which is a 2022 movie. Now, that is not a great start, Lewis.
I don't want to discuss this.
OK, so the council's already done its work on you, has it?
It hasn't done its work on... That guy being killed has done its work on me. I know if somebody set fire to...
And that's exactly why they did it.
Yeah, and that's exactly
why people need to stand up and talk about it.
It's not my job to stand up. First of all, I'm not a citizen of this country, number one, and I'm a coward. And I'm a bit of a fool. And I think you are too, Josh. And I think you should basically you should not be so involved.
Okay, well, I don't want to be hyperbolic, but I think that this could potentially... Certainly, I think it's a huge story. As Simon says, nothing's been set in stone yet.
Yeah.
But the ramifications for it, if it went the wrong way, could be the end of Western liberal democracy in this country as we know it. Well, the reintroduction of blasphemy laws, particularly the protection of Islam as an ideology, I think would be the end of our civilization.
That, for me, to be honest, and, you can never be sure with Lewis whether he's joking or to what extent, but I think a lot of people do feel afraid to put their head above this particular parapet. As far as I'm concerned, it's not the reintroduction of blasphemy laws that would mean the end of Western liberal civilization. It would be the protection of Islam, specifically, because Islam is... counter, its beliefs, its tenets, its core beliefs are counter to Western liberalism. And it's the loss of the right to criticise those and to suggest that those be reformed and to be revisited by the powers that be within Islam that would be a threat. If, to be honest, you made it illegal to, I don't know, the kind of thing that Stuart Lee was doing on stage in Jerry Springer the Opera, in which Christ was subjected to various humiliations, made to wear an adult nappy and so on. If you were to reintroduce laws to prevent that sort of thing happening, I don't think that would present a threat to liberal democracy, to Western civilization. Because that was part of Western civilization at one point, which we have thankfully outgrown. This is a very specific threat.
Okay.
And I think we need to go a little bit further and just say we mustn't have blasphemy laws and say we must be allowed to criticise Islam, because Islam is problematic.
I think that's a really good distinction. And I think we should also make another distinction here, that there is such a thing as anti-Muslim bigotry. That is something that needs to be dealt with. Arguably, there already are laws to deal with hatred towards Muslims for being Muslims. But we are talking here about an ideology, and they are different things. And, of course, the word Islamophobia is specifically designed to conflate the two.
And keep in mind, Josh, that this is a comedy program. And I think we need to keep that in mind.
Well, there are plenty of funny stories to come up.
And you know what? It is really fun what you're doing right now for you. It is really fun. But for the rest of us, it's not fun.
Fair enough. Let's get on some fun. Lewis, have some fun with the Daily Mail. How much did it cost?
It cost £1.10. It cost £1.10, and then the Telegraph is like, I think, £3. £3.50. That's tomorrow. It's a lot of money for the Daily Mail. I love the Daily Mail. I buy the Daily Mail when I'm out and about because it's £1.10. And it's 85 pounds for subscribers, so if you want to save some money. Anyway, as Trump threatens trade...
Do you ever actually read the Daily Mail?
I don't... Because I get it online. It's free. It's kind of hard to. You just get the feeling what's in the news.
Joke. I was just hoping you would just tell us.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Don't talk to me. As Trump threatens trade war with the EU, but hints... I said it was a comedy program, but I'm not comedic. I'm not, so it's really horrible for me to, get on your case. At least you're bringing passion into this show. As Trump threatens trade war with the EU, but hints at sparing the UK. Hey. Starmer begs Brussels for closer ties at a palace banquet. This is Keir Starmer. This is the Labour Party. They have no place in this government, in this country anymore. Or is that too serious? Is that too serious? I'm not afraid of them. I'm afraid of the Muslims.
We have a couple of good stories that might unpick Starmer's...
I will say this. The fact is, Trump is shaking the world. Trump is a great man. And the more Trump is a great man, the less Keir Starmer seems to be like a very little...
So, Simon, it seems to be that Starmer is sort of caught a little bit. He's got the EU he's trying to suck up to. He's got... Trump that he's also trying to make the peace with as well. I quite like the fact that Trump came out and said, the UK, we like the UK. That suggests that that Starmer has actually done some very good sucking up to Trump so far.
No, it does not.
Yeah, it does.
Can I talk about this? I'm sorry. You have something to...
Well, can I ask Simon first? You can ask him,
and then I'll tell you. Because British people have the weirdest idea about Trump. He does not like this country. He left his country. He's typical of the way...
He loves us. Sorry, Simon, please.
That's right. Yeah,
Sorry about
I
that,
do
Simon.
think it's quite interesting that, you present him as being caught between two stools, but that is the nature of diplomacy, and on a world stage it's not unusual.
Yeah, that's
But
a good point.
I do think we're in a reasonably strong position at the moment that not only is Britain not in the EU, with which Trump has the second biggest trade deficit that he's trying to rebalance that, the biggest one is with China, and with Britain he doesn't have one at all. We actually he has a slight surplus with Britain. So we're in a very strong position in that regard. The pound had a big surge yesterday. We know that the tariffs that he's presented to Mexico and Canada have already been negotiated into a month-long freeze.
We should just quickly say that's been the latest development. Canada, it's not printed on any of the papers yet because it happened so recently, but Canada have basically gone, oh, yeah, OK, fine.
The interesting thing was, I was on this show, in this very chair, just like Leo Kearse in your position, and we were agreeing that we couldn't quite see what he was trying to bully Canada into. It was quite difficult. With Mexico, it was obvious, because there'd been a lot of anger about the southern border becoming remarkably porous, and fentanyl making its way up, along with they're not sending their best. But
I will tell you,
Canada's a pretty innocent, but apparently now Trudeau is putting a 10,000 strong force on the border there as well.
You don't know what you're talking about. Okay. British people don't know what they're talking about. Canada is a malevolent force in North America. They're worse even than Mexico. They're filled.
So what is he trying to achieve?
He's trying, first of all, when I remember him 40 years ago, I was walking up Avenue B.
Oh my God. Not your Trump story again, please.
No, this is another one. And I remember, because Donald Trump was speaking about the trade deficit, that the people in the power positions didn't care about the trade deficit, but it's the most important thing. We need money, and we're giving it to Canada.
So it's all about the trade deficit.
They're making 200 billion pounds a year off of us, number one. That's Canada. Number two is America is fed up with the world being all sniggly, and look, we're so much better than the Americans. The Americans don't care about us. Meanwhile, while we're paying for your defense, for England's defence, we're paying for NATO. Only two countries were paying.
But we're talking specifically about Canada here. What is it he wants? Because he was saying the drug issue, and there's only 1% of fentanyl goes to the border.
And Canada are people filled with negativity towards America, and Donald Trump doesn't. He wants
so it's a psychic punishment.
It is he's fed up with them. And number two,
I know the feeling.
And number two, Donald Trump is not Britain's friend. He's not the enemy. He doesn't care about.
Well, the interesting thing, Simon, as you were saying, is that in terms of this trade deficit, is that we just don't make anything.
Absolutely. We're a service industry. We don't even export very much to the EU. In truth, when everybody was going, oh my God, Brexit. What?
So maybe that's why he likes it.
What do we export exactly? Well, it was like insurance.
Some whiskey and cheddar cheese.
But I do think
we British people go to America and bring a little sassiness.
Can I hear from Simon?
No, because I don't think he knows what he's talking about. He knows. I shouldn't say that. You know so much, Simon. He's brilliant. He's the smartest guy on our. If this is going to listen, am I right? But you don't know anything about America. You should ask Louis Schaefer, and I'm not even on the main programs. I should be on the
Simon,
main
what I want to
programs.
hear. As Simon Evans knows nothing about America, can you please tell us about the Times and a British story, which Lewis obviously knows nothing about?
Yes, there's some things I don't know. You don't ask me about
the
those
NHS.
NHS withholds Nottingham report to protect killers' privacy. The NHS has refused to publish info report exposing failings in the treatment of a paranoid schizophrenic who killed 3 people in Nottingham because of patient confidentiality. The Times has learned. Well, that is obviously going to strike some people as also rather convenient.
Yeah.
As it often does. When one proves these things, they're always relatively watertight, and unless you have a specialist legal degree, you might struggle to unpick the hypocrisy, but it always just seems to go in a certain direction, doesn't it?
Well, this is it. The tragedy of these 3 lives, 2 particularly young at the beginning of their young adulthood.
Yeah.
And the fact is that they won't even show the families this information. That seems very dodgy to me.
The NHS is the second worst organisation in this country.
Okay.
It is
number one?
Second worst.
Yeah, who's number one?
I don't know. But I know there's got to be one. No, I don't want to be too. But it is a bad organisation. That's what this country needs. It needs full transparency.
Lewis,
and the NHS.
I want to have a look at some more front pages now. We have The Guardian. Starmer faces Labour revolt over backing of oil field. Metro, dangerous fool who put lives at risk. And The Star, missing Britain OK, then, let's go to the #1 dangerous organisation in this country. Starmer faces Labour revolt over the backing of the oil field. Is this hypocrisy, Lewis?
It is. The fact is this country needs oil. Oil isn't that bad. People are learning every single day. It's according to the news, according to the Guardian, Starmer faces Labour revolt over a backing for oil field. And so there's some Rosemont project up north in Scotland, whatever. And then, but they're also backing the airport thing. And they said we're going to die on not having an airport, and now they're having an airport. It's the fact that this country needs airfields. If it does need airfields, or it needs oil, it's the cheapest form of things.
Airfields in an oil port.
What? What?
But it's like, Simon, they're not technically breaking their manifesto pledge, right?
I haven't had enough time to analyse the detail of this.
Because the licence was done before. They're saying actually it's OK.
So in terms of the manifesto promise that they were not going to...
No new licences.
They're going to be no new licences. But, of course, the net zero thing is like a general theme. Yeah. I am personally all in favour of it, obviously, you know, and I would much rather see hypocrisy, backing down, backtracking, reverse ferret. I would like to see this government give up its absurd commitment, however legally binding it supposedly is, to net zero. And given that the rest of the world is still burning coal at a rate that would have made Harold Wilson's eyes water, you know, I just do not see the point of us being the one people that refuse to do.
Could you finally sorry, 1 second. It's just because we have to go to break. But the Daily Star. I think this is really interesting because they're basically calling out Trump for being an idiot, yet since they obviously printed it...
I'm skipping.
Yeah, this is the
I'm going to get into trouble if I don't do a shout-out to Beyonce for Mariana, who works here. She's like the best buddy of Mariana.
And what do you... I mean, it's funny that they've basically been found out at the Daily Star.
Yes, I mean, the one thing you could throw at Trump is that he's a bully. You could say that he uses strongman tactics, even gangster-like, but he does win as a rule.
Missing brain, well, he worked. Yeah. Right, that's the newspapers given the old one too, but come back for the 3-4 to find out what Starmer is using his acting lessons for and why, if you want to deal with illegal immigration, you might want to think about rejoining the EU. Find out why in 2 minutes. This is Headliners, only on GB News.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Well, specialist from Woolly and Wallace Auction House, Alexandra Aguilar, joins me now. Alexandra, how lovely to see you. And I wonder whether you were going to bring the jewellery in. You're actually wearing the jewellery. So shall we begin with the bracelet?
Right, so it's a diamond line bracelet, as you can see. It's really a beautiful thing. It's made of 27 diamonds with a yellow tint, and they are mounted on yellow gold, and it's really a beautiful, beautiful piece. But there's more to it, and as you mentioned, it's the provenance. It comes from the collection of Elizabeth Taylor, really one of the queens of Hollywood, and it was given to her by Michael Jackson.
Have you any idea why Michael Jackson gave her such a magnificent gift?
They were very, very good friends. They were friends for over 20 years, and he knew her love for diamonds, for jewelry, and we know that they exchanged many presents, including this fantastic bracelet.
Would that have been made new at that time?
Yes, I believe so.
We're talking, what, about the 1970s or something like that?
Oh, maybe a little bit later.
Later, 80s?
Yes, that's right. But what's particularly interesting about this one is all the 27 diamonds have the same colour. And it's very difficult to find stones with the same colour, with the same yellow tint. So it makes it particularly beautiful and particularly special. Why
do you think it will go for about £70,000?
It's... well, it is a beautiful piece. It's very wearable, as you can see, and there is the provenance is amazing. Jewelry from the collection of Elizabeth Taylor is very sought after, of course.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No. Welcome back to Headliners. We're going to go straight into the Mail. Simon and his Starmer utilising his acting lessons in this denial.
Yes, interesting. We have the potential Partygate of the left. They've been hoping to pin one of these on him, and this is emerging, I think, from the book that threw up the thing about Angela Rayner thinking that he couldn't run a bath as well, which is proving to be quite damaging. The story is Keir Starmer denies breaking lockdown rules as it emerges he took a private acting lesson from a key worker during COVID lockdown. This is a woman called Leonie Mellinger, and he had a professional session with her. I mean, they're trying to make it sound slightly sleazy as well, but I don't think that is a genuine implication. On Christmas Eve in 2020. It's very hard to see how a voice coach can be regarded as a key worker. That was a term that was generally used to describe grocery deliveries or the NHS and so on. I mean, obviously, Keir Starmer, if anyone needs voice coaching, I would say that's true. Keir Starmer could certainly benefit from that, but it could have waited a little while, I would have thought. And so there is the potential that this will stick to him and be used to undermine his credibility on the whole, you know, the endless criticisms which he levelled at Boris Johnson.
I think there are lots of criticisms that can be levied against Starmer, but what do you think, Lewis? Do you think this one's actually going to stick? Do you think it matters? Do you think it's real?
I think it won't stick as a parliamentary system, and I think they didn't put the other guy in jail, Mr. Hair. What's the other guy with the hair?
Boris Johnson.
Boris Johnson. They didn't put him in jail. These people from COVID, I don't even want to think about COVID because it's just bad times. But they deserve either being fired or being in prison, or then there's the third option, which is not available for discussion in this country.
You know, Simon...
And then people are going to listen to that and say, well, he didn't say what the third option was. I thought he was funny, but he's not funny. He didn't say what the third...
I think it was very funny.
She's an interesting character in today. I just want to mention this, Leonie Mellinger. I looked her up on her Wikipedia. She was born in the British military hospital neighbouring Spandau Prison, as her actor father was then working for Bertolt Brecht's theatre company next to Spandau Prison, which held Rudolf Hess. And she was married briefly to Robin Asquith, the actor who was in the Confessions films, along with Tony Blair's father-in-law.
Look at all this background information.
It's starting to look a little bit like
Lewis, you've seen the King's Speech, right, Lewis?
I haven't seen the King's Speech, but I know who Bertolt Brecht is, and he was a communist who went back to East Germany after the war.
Do you think that there was...
very compromised.
Do you think there was any element, though, of this kind of being... You know, you talk about whether Jenny was a key worker, but if she is providing him psychological help, you could argue it that way. If it's like the King's Speech...
think she's an emotional support
Well, if she's there to kind of help him sound like a human being...
I just would like to know how his voice sounded before he had these voice coaches. Has he had more than 3 sessions?
Well, no, this is the thing. She has been with him since 2017. At some point, I've got a mate of mine, he's had a personal trainer for 20 years, and he's still... Bless him, he's a great friend of mine, but he's a big fatty. And it's like, at some point, you've got to be like, you're not doing the job.
It's like psychoanalysis.
Well, I have been to speech therapy. I had to get rid of my New York accent. And...
With this person,
yeah, and so it can help a little bit. But the point is that everybody thought they were going to die, and a lot of people thought they were going to die, and especially Keir Starmer, Mr. Whatever he was, he thought he was going to die. He was telling everybody else they're going to die, but he's got some special thing. He couldn't come out and say, you know, I didn't give a better speech if I could.
You know what? I just want to say that Lewis helped me with my New York accent, which helped get me a job. So thank you very much, Lewis.
Also, if you are a voice coach, you do have to teach people how to aspirate. They have to.
Very good. I need to actually look up what aspirate means.
That is a particular disease vector.
Time's out, Lewis, and is Farage going to take us back into the EU?
Well, what story are we up to?
EU plans to let states.
EU plans to let states deport failed asylum seekers and criminals. I didn't know that they couldn't do this, but I assume basically if you go in there, it's the same thing like with this country. They can't just put them on a plane like President Trump, the greatest president in American history, is doing. He's saying you're in the country. People in Texas, did you hear what they're in Texas. They're stopping people they're just doing random stops on the street, and they say, let's see your ID. Are you an American citizen? And if you're not, they're being shipped out of the country. And what this story is in the Times, it's saying that because there's a lot of blowback from Poland, where this paper comes from Austria, Germany, Italy, that say they want to ship people out, and it's bringing dissent. And so that the EU is thinking maybe we'll allow them to ship people out.
The interesting thing, I think, is that this is not an EU directive, it's not an EU law. It's the 1951 convention, predates the EU, I think is the UN convention, refugee.
But they signed on to that. So
they're signed on. 144 countries are signed on to this around the world. Yeah. And this is something that we, as the United Kingdom, have been able to withdraw from, to the same extent that the EU has all this time. This is the sort of thing that we were intending that Brexit was supposed to be about. If the EU gets in here ahead of the UK, it's an absolute,
this is it. I mean, it's like we're going to have to go back into the EU to be able to get the permission to be able
the kind of thing that we were supposed to be, enforcing our own desire to escape from these antiquated,
But we should leave the people on a happy note. The people who watch us, the good people who watch at GB News, is that eventually it's all going to fall. All of the left in Europe and the left here, Keir Starmer, I don't even want to use the word, but he's like a...
Well, you know what? We do have some happy stories to finish on this particular section. Good news for men in The Guardian, Simon, because finally we're going to get some legal protection.
Yes, well, you say that jokingly. This is coercive control to be put on a par with other types of domestic abuse in England and Wales.
A bit depressing.
And basically the point is that coercive control at this point is not something that you have to share afterwards. If you have physical domestic abuse, if somebody has been in jail for that, then the various services, the parole and the other enforcement agencies and the police have to share that information if it's relevant. But the implication in the story is that it's only, again, one-way traffic, that it's only men doing this to women. But I would actually query that.
It does actually say that it's mostly men, but there are definitely women who are doing this.
But it's been run through by Timpson, the key and shoe man, who is now in charge of the prisons agency, and he's the prisons minister. He's implemented this change, and he says... quite specifically that it's to ensure women and girls feel safe in their homes. Well, I think men and boys are entitled to feel safe in their homes as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, Lewis, you've been divorced. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, no, that's the point. The whole point is that when it gets put on women, this thing will be thrown out, number one. And number two, when it's put on Muslims, this thing will be thrown out. When they tell a Muslim...
See, you were going to go home, I'm afraid.
I know. I wasn't going to say anything. I'm just so angry at Josh. I'm just so angry. I can't...
And you can tell me in the break. We're going to go to a break now, and you're going to scream at me some more.
I'm going to scream at you. I'm going to tell you that I can't work here if you're going to be here.
Wow, this is very, very
I know,
intense.
it's really inappropriate to talk like
We'll find out if he's here after this interview.
And they should show a picture of Lewis Schaefer
show a picture of him. Show how angry he is.
I'm like absolutely furious.
He is furious. He got a hurtful comment on Twitter, so he's very angry about it. We'll talk about it.
When I'm always with you, I get hurtful.
Because we've got some I get some fantastic stories still to come. They're going to be really funny. What's more important in Hollywood? Trans people or Muslims? And DEI has a new target: environmental groups. Find out more in 2. This is Headliners, only on GB News.
Evening. Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Bit of wet weather around tonight and tomorrow, but fairly mild. It is going to turn colder come the end of this week. But for the time being, we've got a deep area of low pressure heading across Iceland, and its trailing, waving weather front is draping its way down towards northwest Scotland, where it's been a very wet evening. That rain will spread across Northern Ireland, then across much of western Scotland. Heavy enough, we've got a Met Office yellow warning in place for southwest Scotland. Most of England was, though, staying dry through the night. Quite murky across the southeast, some mist and fog, bit of drizzle is possible. And generally a bit milder than last night. Could dip down to the low single digits with some clearer skies in the east, but many places will start Tuesday quite a bit above freezing. But we will start with rain across central Scotland, West Wales. Much of England, though, will still be dry at this stage. It's quite grey and murky across East Anglia and the southeast. There's that rain, a soggy start for a good part of Wales. Northwest England, southern Scotland, the rain edging away from Glasgow through the morning rush hour. In fact, much of northern and western Scotland also seeing some bright spells to start the day, but there will be showers coming in. Now, along this rain band, along this weather front, it's also going to be quite gusty, so a wet and windy spell, taking its time before it moves away from Wales. So a pretty soggy morning, that rain working into southwest England, into the Manchester area as well, and eventually jumping over the Pennines into parts of northeast England. Much of the rest of eastern England, though, having a dry day, turning brighter behind it, but with some showers. And quite a mild day. Again, double digits for many, but feeling cooler, particularly with the winds. Now, the winds will ease on Tuesday evening into the night, which will lead to a touch of frost on Wednesday morning. More showers coming into western Scotland, the north coast of Northern Ireland, but many places set fair on Wednesday thanks to high pressure. And for many, the dry, fine weather will continue through Thursday, Friday and into the weekend. However, it is also going to turn quite a bit colder.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back to Headliners. We're going to start with Tuesday's Telegraph, Lewis, which will finally tell us which is the most sacred caste, trans women or Muslims?
Well, that's a very interesting question right now. The racist, misogynistic, transgender-destroying Netflix Oscar dream. That didn't sound right, but basically they're saying that this woman who was in this movie called
Amelia Perez.
Amelia Perez, and her name is
Carla Sofia Gascon.
And that they trolled her past Twitter account. She's a trans woman. Okay, so she's a bit unusual, right? And she's been bad-mouthing Muslims, saying her country of Spain has too many Muslims in it, and she doesn't like it. And they're saying you can't be, you can't be an Oscar winner if you're not going to like what's going on in Spain. Not gonna like the whole Muslim thing. Did I explain that correctly?
That was very good. Yeah, I don't know if you said something about trans people being weird or something like that. But something that's not mentioned, Simon, in this article at all, and we'll get on to what her actual tweets were. But it doesn't say what could arguably be an even greater controversy that you have a man in the female category.
Yeah,
and doesn't mention that at all.
No, we've moved on from that.
Yes, that's the old one. That's the old controversy.
You do sometimes feel as if these things ratchet, and so they kind of move on to the next controversy so that previous one is now beyond any dispute. That's not up for grabs anymore. But yes, absolutely right. Carla Sofia Gascon is in the actress category. There was one point a few years ago where they tried to erase the entire division, right? And just say best actor, and it didn't work anyway. But it seems like there's some significant rivalry with a Brazilian film called I'm Still Here, which is that perhaps trans-related as well? I don't know. Or maybe they're just the Spanish or Portuguese language films. I don't know. It's become a very heated controversy. A woman called Sarah Hadji has dug up a load of her old tweets, and I'm going to just go there and say, I don't think they're that bad. I don't think they're discrediting. I don't think they're disqualifying. You might take issue with them. She doesn't say, I despise Muslims. She says, this is one of them. I'm sorry, is it just my impression, or are there more Muslims in Spain? Every time I go to pick up my daughter from school, there are more women with their hair covered and their skirts down to their heels. Next year, instead of English, we'll have to teach Arabic.
That sounds like someone who has concern of the Islamification of their society.
It's not spoken in, it's not hate speech, it's not slurs. She discusses George Floyd.
But even if it is, people should be allowed to say what they want to say. It reminds me when I was in my 20s, and it was after the Iranian Revolution, and my town was filled with super rich Iranian Jews.
Yeah.
And the people were like, and the whole town is made up of Jews anyway, but we were Ashkenazi Jews, and these were Iranian Jews, and we were complaining about it. I don't think I complained about it, but a lot of other people did. And the truth is, people should be allowed to complain. This just shows, like I say, I don't want to discuss it, because it's so touchy to people. You can't, and this is what that Rayner said, when she gave a list of all the things that you can't say about Muslims and makes Islam.
Clearly the thing, if you want to be inclusive, if Netflix feels it's an inclusive organisation, then that should include starring roles taken by people who have views.
Different opinions,
yeah. If they're expressing those views with slurs, we all know where the line is.
You say that, but Netflix, they've erased her from the poster already. She wasn't allowed to come... She's in the UK at the moment. She wasn't allowed to come and do publicity for the movie. And also, she's claiming that she's sort of being kept in kind of prison at the moment. She's kind of being locked away. Wow. But they don't want it. And the other thing is, this is interesting because this is in the Telegraph, but the writer of it sort of... The tweet that you mentioned said it's like this sort of eye-watering instances of Islamophobia. That, I'm sorry, is not an eye-watering instance of Islamophobia. And you question the journalist here.
It's editorialising.
And this is the Telegraph, and they become like the Guardian.
Yeah, it's very strange to kind of read it in that way. So, but it is interesting, and as you were, I think, alluding to, Lewis...
I was saying it directly.
As you're saying directly here, it seems like trans people, or trans women, in this case, like the holy caste, yet she mentions something disparaging against the Islamification of Spain. Suddenly, she's persona non grata.
Incidentally, the film critic who wrote this piece and said it was eye-watering and so on, his name is Tim Roby, and I looked him up on the Telegraph website, and only 3 days ago, or 5 days ago, he was saying this is the greatest film ever. I don't know whether he's covering his back because he's been getting some heat.
Anyway, it was meant to be rubbish.
There's only one person who's brave, and that's Josh.
No, that's not true, Lewis.
Yes, it is true. Well, then you're stupid then. You don't come across as
I'm definitely a bit stupid. Disturbing news in The Guardian, Simon. How will we ever save the planet if white people are in charge of environmental groups?
Yes, this is it's one of those headlines that you can read in one or two ways, and you'll guess which one I've read it. Environmental groups in the UK still very white, especially at the top. And, of course, this is framed by The Guardian as something for which white people should be blamed. Whereas, in fact, obviously what is happening is that people of colour refusing to take responsibility or step up.
Well, it could be that they don't pay particularly well.
Did you say that as a joke? Josh, he said that as a joke.
I know he says it's a joke, but there could be some
someone could be listening to it and think, oh, wait a second.
No, it's funny. But I'm just saying that there is an element of truth to it.
You should say, Josh, that you say, Simon, that's really, really funny.
Simon, that's really, really funny. And, like any great joke that you just made, it reveals an element of truth here, which you could argue that people of colour are clever enough to not want to work for less money.
Cunning.
In that way.
No, I have no idea what the truth of it
may be.
I do sometimes think there are various graphs and schemata and so on which you can find online which demonstrate the different kind of hierarchy of concerns that different people have, and white liberals care about everything except themselves. This has been proven, and they tend to be the ones who run environmental concerns because they are much more concerned about whether a country that none of them have ever been to is exposed to a heat wave than they are whether or not
they're cold, whether they get £300 a month so that they live.
Yeah. So what do you think, Lewis? Are the environmentalists massively racist?
Yeah, of course they are. First of all, this is in The Guardian. You cannot believe a single thing you ever read in The Guardian, number one. And number two is of course black people aren't a lot of black people are, but a lot of them aren't. They got other problems. You know what I mean? Maybe some of them just moved to this country and they're just trying to make a living, and they're not sitting there saying but some of them do. And we as British people we've been enveloped in British people, so that when there are problems in this country, we react to it. We go, I don't want that church to fall down. I don't want that.
It's nice to have you back being British in this part of the show. Times, Lewis, with furries in Glasgow getting neutered.
Yes, and this is furries warned not to abuse other species at Glasgow event. And this is basically what happened with the trans people. You take them seriously enough, and then they get offended. And so what's happening is the furries are people who dress up as animals because they saw kind of humanoid expressions in other animals. And so at this convention, which has 1,200 people come dressed up in costumes, they have to be told, don't be pervs.
Yeah, basically, and don't you think that's incredibly revealing, Simon? The fact that they have to be told to don't exhibit artworks depicting paedophilia, which is like coupled... I've been to a board game convention. I wasn't told, by the way, don't play a board game that's about paedophiles.
I have no idea whether these people deny that it's all fundamentally about sex and sexual perversion, or whether they accept that it is and they're just... But clearly, it drifts into that territory very quickly if they're not monitored. And this expression, cub porn, which is furry paedophilia, essentially, is really pretty nauseating, isn't it? To be told that they mustn't have that, or indeed humans having sex with animals. There's another paragraph. Toilet-related activities are highly discouraged. This includes scat, water sports, adult diapers in use and vomit. We do not entirely exclude this content, but only seek to accept items with very mild depictions suitable for a general viewing public. I would like to know exactly how much is acceptable for the general viewing public.
Absolutely, and I would like to say how much of this is part of the Q+ that has now been separated in America from the LGB.
The slippery slope
I think they're very
Have they separated?
Yeah, they have. They just did it. Nature is healing in the male, Simon, when a famous female star suddenly remembers what a woman is.
Yeah, well, Kate Blanchett is... still a spokeswoman, it seems, for Me Too. And basically, the headline tells you the whole story. Kate Blanchett insists the Me Too movement didn't ever take root. Unfortunate turn, perhaps, in Hollywood 7 years after stating she had been sexually harassed by Harvey Weinstein. She was asked whether it had done its job now, and she's basically saying she never thought it really got fully involved and cleaned the place out. Weinstein was the main story. It's hard to know, isn't it, from this far away, whether there was an enormously deeply rooted culture of sexual abuse and demands for favours, or indeed actual rape, or whether removal of Weinstein and a couple of other key figures has cleaned it up.
Well, I think that there has been a massive change there, and the fact that she doesn't give any examples about how Me Too hasn't been incorporated is very telling. Coming up, who to blame if you're bad at maths, and what age is the peak of health and happiness, and how many years past it is Lewis? Find out in 2 seconds.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello. Well, there's plenty of fine weather around as higher pressure becomes established, but unsettled in parts of Greece. So across the Canaries, largely dry on Tuesday. Across Gibraltar, perhaps just seeing some spells of rain or showers. Largely dry across parts of Italy as well with sunshine, but across Greece, we have got an area of low pressure, bringing some showers, perhaps quite heavy at times. But looking ahead across Wednesday and Thursday, plenty of settled weather and feeling pleasant too.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
It's the body image thing that concerns me. It's young girls watching Love Island and really skinny girls and young boys
hit the gym, but after this,
exactly. I mean, they're seeing perfect bodies on the screen.
You don't need to go in the gym, Maymoon. You look gorgeous as you are, love.
I know. You see, the reason I don't enter anything like that, Kerry, is you know
you're gonna win.
Exactly. And it's not fair. It's not fair, I think, on everybody else being there.
It's not fair.
No.
But, Kerry, what do you think about the body image thing? You know, when you talk about your daughter, is that something that you'd worry about, her comparing herself to the likes of what she sees on the screen?
Now, this is where there's a conflict of interest for me because I've been brought up in this industry since I was 17, so it's massively affected me. I mean, when you're put on the front cover of magazines after having a baby with a stretch mark in the circle of shame, you know, it does do a psychological effect on you. I think a lot of celebrities who have been around for so many years as I have been affected by that. But everyone has to bear in mind, I've had my children. I'm in my 40s. I feel I'm entitled to have my tweaks and try and improve on what I think are going down south and health and safety, tripping over any things that I don't want to be tripping over anymore. But I definitely do believe, I mean, majority of the young girls that go on Love Island, they all have the same big lips, the same big eyelashes, all the butt implants, and they're barely in their 20s. You know, it's if you go to the airport now, I remember going to the airport and I looked around and all the girls looked exactly the same.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners, straight to business with Tuesday's Mail, Simon, where it seems that stupidity is hereditary.
Well, it's funny you put it that way, Josh, because that is actually the truth, although that is what they're trying to fluff up and conceal here. Bad at maths, blame your mum and dad. Parents pass their anxiety about numbers onto their children, study finds. No, they don't. Parents do not pass their anxiety, they pass their ability, whether it be good, poor, middling, indifferent, outstanding. Intelligence is far more hereditary than society is ready to admit. Between 50 and 75% of IQ is hereditary, and maths is very IQ loaded, very G loaded. And this presentation of it as something that you mustn't pass on as an anxiety about whether you can do it or not, and whether you can gain confidence from practicing a bit. The reality is some people are better than others at maths. And that is something that the world should face up to.
That is so... It's only a super smart person like you who would think that. Of course they can't learn because they're stupid. Look at me, I had no problem because I'm smart.
I feel that's a much more humane way to approach the people.
But it's not the truth. The truth is, I tried to teach my kids, but the mother. Okay, I wasn't a good teacher, but the fact is I tried to teach. I wasn't that good, but I knew you could learn how.
You're essentially supporting my argument, right?
I'm not saying my kids were dumb. My kids were very smart, very brilliant children.
But there could be some truth in what you're saying, Lewis, in that I think that
the mother
obviously hereditary IQ is a big part of it, but I think when someone has this anxiety, it does pass on. Just knowing my wife, who's very clever, but actually had some issues with maths, not because she couldn't understand it, but just bad teaching.
But how is that passed on to your children?
Because she gets very flustered when it comes to doing homework. No, but when it goes through like doing homework with your kids and stuff. Now, fortunately, they've of course taken. They've got all of her looks and all of my brain. So. But there's definitely she's very straight. And what they talk about here, which is interesting, is help giving. Lessons to parents to kind of increase their confidence, which they would pass on to their kids.
But
there might be some truth to that.
Well, there might be a tiny bit. I think it's worth saying to parents, don't pass on your conviction that they'll be bad at it because you were.
Okay, well, that's interesting. Okay, right. Well, times next, Lewis.
So in other words, he changed.
That's what the show is. We change minds. Good.
So you apologise. Apologise to me. He did. He agreed with Josh. He didn't agree with Josh.
Lewis, with the irony that plants only speak English.
This is in France. This is in the Times. I don't know how much it costs for tomorrow. You can look it up yourself. I'm getting negative comments. Uproar as left-wing French councils teach staff to talk plants. There were £3,000, or 3,000 euros, excuse me, that were given to in a council in France to teach teachers to talk to plants, and this is nothing new. I remember years and years ago they said that because humans have oxygen and they also have they breathe out carbon dioxide, which is good for plants. So when you talk to a plant, it's probably is going to be somewhat good.
But do you think taxpayer money should be going to teach council members?
Number one, it shouldn't be going there. Number two, it's such a feminist, women simpy kind of thing. We're going to talk to.
Well, I take issue with that. I want to say I've had a look at it, and they're not just talking to the the plants. They are kind of role-playing as if they were
right,
plants
because
or
they want us to stop killing plants, but they're all
and
vegans
it may be
and
mad,
vegetarians.
but it's not necessarily feminist. There was an excellent book written about this a few years ago by a man called Charles Foster, who is a man and not a feminist. It was called Being a Beast. He adopted the lifestyle of various British animals. He was a badger in the first and excellent chapter for about a month. He genuinely lived face down in the dirt, in the woods. It's possible to do this stuff.
And you're going to read a book by a guy who's
all right, well, there we go.
face
Independent Simon with the end of grape racism.
Yeah, this is a load of trash. The independent supermarkets want us to stop looking at grapes as just red, green and black, and instead start accepting that
See the people, who they are behind, what their personality is.
Well,
let's not judge people on their grape colour.
They're just trying to excite you into the idea that there's some sort of interesting variety in vape. The grapes is just sugar water, which should be turned into wine.
So you don't think there's any difference of taste between the red and the green?
Tiny amount.
And there might be.
The only significant difference is whether you've got to have to spit the pips out. That's the only...
See, I think this is the most controversial discussion we've had, because I think there's a massive difference between red and green. And I think that the supermarkets, Lewis, is a conspiracy by Big Grape to get rid of those stupid red grapes.
Do you want to know something? There is actually a difference, at least in America, in New York, when I was living there, of the type, the races that ate red grapes, and the races that ate yellow grapes, and the races that ate black grapes.
OK, well, this is an angle they could use.
That's not here, but that's an interesting... I don't know if it's interesting.
Which race ate which, then? You can't just
white people ate the white grapes.
Oh, really?
And Spanish people, or Puerto Ricans, but, you know, it's a lot of Mexicans, they ate the red grapes.
That is your best New York story to date. The show is nearly over. Let's take another quick look at Tuesday's front page as well. I'm going to tell people it's real now. Telegraph, Rayner to set rules on Islam and free speech. The Daily Mail, what a time to be crawling back to the EU. The Times, PM won't back EU in trade war. The Guardian, Starmer faces Labour revolt over backing for oil field. The Metro, dangerous fool who put lives at risk. And the Daily Star, missing brain. That is all we have time for. Thank you very much to my guests, Lewis Schaefer and Simon Evans. I think they work brilliantly together. We are going to be back tomorrow at 11 p.m. with some other people. And if you're watching at 5 a.m, then stay tuned for breakfast. Thank you very much for joining us.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Evening. Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Bit of wet weather around tonight and tomorrow, but fairly mild. It is going to turn colder come the end of this week. But for the time being, we've got a deep area of low pressure heading across Iceland, and its trailing, waving weather front is draping its way down towards northwest Scotland, where it's been a very wet evening. That rain will spread across Northern Ireland, then across much of western Scotland. Heavy enough, we've got a Met Office yellow warning in place for southwest Scotland. Most of England was, though, staying dry through the night. Quite murky across the southeast, some mist and fog, bit of drizzle is possible. And generally a bit milder than last night. Could dip down to the low single digits with some clearer skies in the east, but many places will start Tuesday quite a bit above freezing. But we will start with rain across central Scotland, West Wales. Much of England, though, will still be dry at this stage. Quite grey and murky across East Anglia in the southeast. There's that rain, a soggy start for a good part of Wales. Northwest England, southern Scotland. The rain edging away from Glasgow through the morning rush hour. In fact, much of northern and western Scotland also seeing some bright spells to start the day, but there will be showers coming in. Now, along this rain band, along this weather front, it's also going to be quite gusty, so a wet and windy spell, taking its time before it moves away from Wales. So a pretty soggy morning, that rain working into southwest England, into the Manchester area as well, and eventually jumping over the Pennines into parts of northeast England. Much of the rest of eastern England, though, having a dry day, turning brighter behind it, but with some showers. And quite a mild day. Again, double digits for many, but feeling cooler, particularly with the winds. Now, the winds will ease on Tuesday evening into the night, which will lead to a touch of frost on Wednesday morning. More showers coming into western Scotland, the north coast of Northern Ireland, but many places set fair on Wednesday thanks to high pressure. And for many, the dry, fine weather will continue through Thursday, Friday and into the weekend. However, it is also going to turn quite a bit colder.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Want to be one of 2 lucky Great British giveaway winners? That's right, you could win one of 2 prize bundles, which includes a brand new iPhone 16, £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in your favourite store, and an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. What would you spend that cash on? For a chance to win an iPhone, vouchers and £10,000 in cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.